Before we start, don't forget to pray for your brothers and sisters as the ordeal is still ongoing. We ask Allah to relieve their suffering. Peace be upon you. In northern Texas, USA, and near Denton County, there is a small town called Copper Canyon. It is connected to Denton by a small bridge only 32 meters long. At first glance, the bridge might seem like just an old wooden structure that time has worn down, but in reality this simple bridge is surrounded by a large number of stories and legends. Terrifying screams, the sound of footsteps without anyone being present. People get scratched and hit as they cross by unseen entities. These occurrences have led to the bridge being listed as one of the top 5 haunted places in America, making it a favorite spot for thrill seekers. Most believe that the frightening events happening there are due to the Goatman. Welcome, and today I will tell you about the haunted Goatman's Bridge. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you get an alert when a new story is posted every week. I want you to get this video to 20,000 likes before the next one. The story begins back in 1846 AD. At that time, Denton County was newly established, and officials were looking for a location to house the county's governmental institutions. They agreed that the site would be in a small town called Pinckneyville, but after just 2 years they were forced to move the headquarters to a new location due to the lack of water. The Texas legislature at the time decided that the new headquarters would be in a town located on a series of high hills, just 1 kilometer away from the old headquarters. The new place was named Alton. However, since it wasn't far from the previous town, the water problem still wasn't solved, and no one wanted to live there except for one person. When the government saw this, they were forced to move the headquarters for the 3rd time in 1850 AD. This time they moved to a town south of Denton, also named Alton. There, the government built a post office, opened 2 hotels, a school, and a church. Slowly, people began to be drawn to the place. Over the course of 6 years, everything seemed perfectly stable. But then the residents started complaining that they were getting sick because of the contaminated water in the town. So, they submitted a petition to move the headquarters a bit north. And soon after, the residents began to leave one by one until Alton was completely deserted. About 30 years after these events, in 1884, a company called King Iron decided to build a wooden and steel bridge connecting Denton to another town called Copper Canyon. They named this bridge Alton Bridge after the old government headquarters, because it was the only bridge that connected Copper Canyon to a famous livestock market located in a forest in Denton. Wagons and horses frequently used the bridge to transport goods until it became one of the busiest places in the entire area. But gradually, people stopped using it and switched to another more modern bridge, which was wider and allowed them to move in both directions, instead of the small wooden bridge that slowed down their movement due to its one-way traffic. Eventually, Alton Bridge and the surrounding area became completely deserted. During the last period when the bridge was still being used as a crossing, many people complained that strange things were happening on it. Weird sounds came from within the forest, unusual movements in the river water below the bridge, and giant shadows appeared among the trees, only to disappear suddenly. What's astonishing is that these sightings weren't from just 1 or 2 people, but thousands. The strangest thing was reports of a large creature standing at the end of the bridge waiting for them. It had a human body but was completely covered in thick black hair with a goat's head and large horns, and it roared with a terrifying sound. As soon as it saw someone walking on the bridge, it would immediately charge at them, but just as it got close, it would suddenly vanish. Because of the numerous terrifying sightings that happened to many people, the bridge became known as Goatman's Bridge. The legend of the Goatman, or the creature known in folklore as the Faun, is a widely spread story in the West. It describes a giant creature standing 2.5 meters tall, with a body that is half human and half goat, completely covered in hair and fur. Sometimes it walks on 2 legs and other times on all 4s. It leaves behind a foul smell wherever it goes. In folklore, the Faun is a fierce, ruthless, and flesh-eating creature that always lives in isolated areas away from humans and in abandoned places. Pay attention to the part about abandoned places, as that's what led many to believe that this Faun is the strange creature at Alton Bridge. However, in reality, popular legends tell a completely different story about Alton Bridge, one that has nothing to do with the Faun creature. The legend says that during that time there was an African-American shepherd named Oscar Washburn. Oscar and his family lived in a small house just north of the bridge. In a short period, Oscar managed to achieve great success in his field, to the point where he became the most famous sheep trader in the entire region. His fame led him to one day put up a sign on the bridge that read, "This road leads to the Goatman," referring to himself as a goat trader. At the same time, he was making a play on words, using GOAT as an acronym for greatest of all time, as a way of expressing pride. In America, there's an organization called the KKK, a notorious extremist group known for its extreme racism against anyone who wasn't originally from America. The members of this group heard about Oscar's proud sign. And since Oscar was African American, they decided to gather one night in August 1983, attack his house, abduct him in front of his wife and children, and take him to Alton Bridge. Next to the sign he had proudly put up, they tied one end of a rope to the bridge's railing and the other around Oscar's neck, then hung him and threw him off the bridge to lynch him. But after only moments, they looked over the bridge and found the rope empty. Oscar's body was nowhere to be seen, even though they hadn't heard anything fall into the river below. The water looked completely normal, with no signs of disturbance or anything that had fallen in. In a state of confusion and panic, they all ran under the bridge, searching the area frantically in hopes of finding Oscar's body, but Oscar had vanished without a trace. At that point, the leader of the group ordered his followers to return to Oscar's house and set it on fire with his wife and children inside as a form of intimidation in case Oscar was hiding somewhere and might try to save them. But as time passed and the house, along with everything in it, was reduced to ashes, Oscar never appeared. The legend says that after this event, Oscar's spirit began to haunt the area, appearing as a man with a goat's head seeking revenge on all those who were responsible for his death and the deaths of his wife and children. Many locals reported seeing this, but they agreed that he wouldn't harm anyone not involved in the horrific incident that happened to him. They say that over the years, Oscar's spirit continued to hunt down and kill the members of the group who abducted him from his home one by one. Afterward, he stopped appearing, except for when he would watch anyone crossing the bridge from within the trees. He would only reveal his full form if you stopped your car in the middle of the bridge, flashed your lights 3 times, or knocked on the bridge railing 3 times, just as the group did before they threw him over. What we've just shared is something that many people in the area strongly believe in. However, some claim that while Oscar's spirit may indeed be present on the bridge and appears from time to time, he is a benevolent spirit. They believe there is another evil spirit haunting the place, the spirit that frightens, hits, scratches, and bites people. This spirit is that of the leader, Steve. Steve was the head of the KKK group that attacked Oscar on that fateful night, known for his violent and aggressive nature and his involvement in satanic practices and dark magic. The story goes that Steve married 3 women, all of whom lived miserable lives filled with oppression and injustice. When he wanted to marry a 4th woman, she refused him. Out of his arrogance, he decided to force her into marriage. On their wedding day, she poisoned herself and died. When Steve found out, he went insane and violently attacked her body to the point that the autopsy report stated that her death was caused by the bites Steve inflicted, not the poison. After the incident, Steve went to the bridge, where Oscar's spirit appeared and killed him. Since then, his spirit has been trapped on the bridge, unable to find release, and it is this spirit that attacks people crossing the bridge. The legend says that if someone calls out his name while standing on the bridge, his spirit will immediately be summoned and will try to harm them. Although Oscar and Steve's legend is the most well-known story about Alton Bridge, some people associate the strange events happening on the bridge with a completely different legend, dating back to the 1860s, before the bridge was even built. This story tells of